high-value woman does not speak to be heard. She speaks when silence has done its work. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when a woman feels the urge to speak quickly, to correct, defend, impress, or fill the silence. But high-value communication begins after that urge passes. It begins in the pause. Most people listen to respond. She listens to understand. Most speak from urgency. She speaks from clarity. And in this contrast lies her quiet power. Let us explore this power together, not by learning how to control others, but by learning how to command the self. Let us begin. There is a distinct difference between speaking to be noticed and speaking from a deep awareness of self. Many women are taught from an early age that their voice must capture attention, that their value is tied to how pleasing or impressive they appear in conversation. But as the mind matures, and as the spirit becomes quiet through life's experiences, a new kind of communication emerges, one no longer rooted in performance but in presence. Presence is not about the volume of your voice or the cleverness of your words. It is not even about how often you speak. True presence arises when you are fully grounded in yourself, when your breath is not rushing to escape your lips, but flowing gently through your body. A high-value woman does not try to impress a man with elaborate language or constant validation. Instead, her energy does the talking long before her mouth opens. Imagine two women entering a room. One speaks quickly, gesturing often, her laughter slightly forced. She means well, she wants to be liked. But there is a tension in her tone. Her body leans forward a little too much. Her eyes dart often to see how she is being perceived. The second woman enters silently. She walks with ease, her shoulders relaxed, her gaze soft. When she speaks, it is slow and steady. Her words are few, but each one lands with quiet strength. Without intending to compete, her presence draws people in. This is not charisma in the traditional sense. This is coherence. And coherence, as confirmed by neuroscience and physiology, is the alignment between your inner and outer world. When your thoughts, emotions, and bodily states are synchronized, others feel it. It creates trust. It creates emotional safety. Mirror neurons in the brain, which unconsciously mimic the nervous system state of the person we are with, are activated in calm, grounded company. And so, when a woman speaks from stillness, she invites others, especially men who often carry silent stress, to rest in her presence. Eastern philosophy teaches us that the most powerful energy is often the quietest. The Tao does not shout. The moon does not strive to be seen. The river does not rush yet carves valleys through stone. In the same way, a woman of high value speaks from a place of deep being. She is not performing a role, she is revealing her presence. In relationships, this becomes especially important. Many women, especially those who are intelligent and emotionally tuned, feel the need to prove their worth in conversation. They over-explain, over-correct, or over-compensate. They forget that their very being, when fully embodied, is enough. A man who is truly ready to meet a woman on a soul level does not require her to audition for his attention. What he craves is her presence, not her perfection. There is a saying in Zen that goes, "Don't speak unless you can improve upon the silence." This is not an invitation to be silent in the face of harm or to suppress one's truth. It is an invitation to ensure that what is spoken rises from truth, not from insecurity. The breath is the gatekeeper of this awareness. If the breath is shallow and fast, likely the words are reactive. But if the breath is deep, the nervous system calms, and what is said emerges from a grounded space. I once worked with a woman named Alina. She was in her late 40s, a successful consultant, and deeply compassionate. Yet, in every romantic relationship, she found herself talking too much. Not from vanity, but from fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being seen as too quiet, too passive, too unsure. In one session, she told me, "I feel like if I don't keep the conversation going, he'll lose interest." I invited her to try something different. To meet a man and focus not on how to impress, but simply on how to be. I guided her through breathing exercises, posture alignment, and emotional grounding. She practiced entering conversations as if her presence was the offering, not her performance. A few months later, she returned with tears in her eyes. "He told me," she said, "that I'm the first woman who makes him feel safe, not entertained, not dazzled. Safe. This is the silent power of presence. It regulates the space around you. It signals, you don't have to perform here. I'm not performing either. And so, a high-value woman talks to men not with words designed to hook their attention, but with presence that reflects her wholeness. Her communication is not reactive, it is responsive. She is not competing for airtime. She understands that the way she feels when she speaks is often more important than the content of what she says. From presence emerges the second core principle, the ability to communicate clear boundaries with a calm voice. Now, in today's culture, the idea of setting boundaries is often taught with an emphasis on firmness, even confrontation. But true strength is not measured by volume. It is measured by how steady one remains in the face of tension. A high-value woman knows what she will accept and what she will not. But she does not need to defend these lines with emotional intensity. She understands that the power of a boundary lies in its clarity, not in its delivery. Neuroscience supports this. When you state your needs or limits while your voice remains calm, you are more likely to activate the parasympathetic nervous system in the listener, encouraging receptivity rather than defensiveness. Conversely, when you raise your voice or speak from a charged emotional state, the other person's amygdala senses threat and prepares for conflict. What follows is escalation, not understanding. We often think that to be respected, we must raise our voice. But in truth, it is the calm voice that makes people lean in. It is the unshaken gaze, the composed posture, and the steady tone that signal, I know my worth. I do not need to yell it. A short story comes to mind of a woman named Hannah who had spent years trying to please her partners. She would say yes when she meant no. She would downplay her own discomfort to avoid disappointing others. Eventually, her relationships began to feel like cages of her own making. When she began to study self-awareness and emotional regulation, she realized something simple but profound. She had never truly said what she needed without guilt. One day, after a long conversation with a man she had been dating, she said, gently and without flinching, I like you, but I do not share physical closeness without emotional clarity. If that is something you're not ready for, I respect your journey, but I will walk mine. There was no anger, no tension, just truth. And that truth, delivered with peace, carried more weight than any argument she could have made. The man paused. Then he said, You're the first person who's ever told me that without making me feel wrong. Whether or not the relationship progressed is irrelevant. What matters is that Hannah stood in her own light, and her voice became an extension of her alignment. Eastern teachings often describe the voice as a sword, not for harming, but for cutting through illusion. When a woman speaks from clarity, her voice becomes sharp yet soft. It does not need to attack to be effective. It simply states what is. A clear no, spoken calmly, carries the vibration of self-trust. A soft yes, spoken from alignment, resonates with authenticity. Posture also plays a hidden but powerful role here. The way a woman holds her body when speaking affects how her words are received. A slouched posture diminishes vocal strength and signals uncertainty. Overcompensating with rigid shoulders or an inflated chest may signal defensiveness. But when the spine is elongated, the chest is open, and the head is balanced, not tilted or bowed, the voice naturally resonates with more depth. The vagus nerve, which governs calm states and social connection, is supported by such alignment. This is not just psychological, it is physiological. So when a woman says, "This is what I need," or "I do not accept that," and she says it with relaxed shoulders, steady breathing, and a grounded stance, her entire presence reinforces the message. There is no dissonance between her words and her body, and in that unity, respect is cultivated, not demanded. In romantic dynamics, this becomes a defining difference. High-value women are not controlling, but they are self-commanding. They do not need to manipulate behavior. They simply reflect their values and allow others to choose whether they align. They do not chase clarity from men. They embody clarity in themselves. And that is what men who are emotionally mature are drawn to. Not compliance, but coherence. Not perfection, but peace. Not loud expressions of pain or longing, but the serene courage it takes to say, "I will not betray myself to belong." This does not mean a woman must always be stoic or subdued. Emotion has its place. Tears have their place. Laughter too. But the key is in the source. Are you speaking from anxiety or from awareness? Are your words arising from fear of rejection or from a deep-rooted connection to your own values? These questions are not easy. but they are essential. Because how we speak reveals how we see ourselves, and how we see ourselves shapes how others respond to us. When a high-value woman speaks to a man, her words are not tools of persuasion. They are invitations to presence. Her calm voice, her clear boundary, and her embodied energy say, "This is who I am. You are free to meet me here, or not." And in that freedom, in that lack of force, real connection becomes possible. Emotional discipline is often misunderstood. To many, it sounds like suppression, like the denial of human experience. But to the woman who seeks depth in herself and in her relationships, emotional discipline is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming clear. It is the practice of staying rooted when emotions surge like wind through a forest. A high-value woman does not avoid feeling. She simply chooses how and when to respond. In any meaningful relationship, emotions will arise. That is not a flaw. It is evidence of depth. But what distinguishes a woman of inner mastery is how she carries these emotions. She does not leak them impulsively, nor does she let them fester in silence. She allows them to rise, she breathes through them, and she waits for the right moment to express them in a way that honors both herself and the relationship. Western psychology supports this inner process. Studies on emotional regulation show that when we pause before reacting, especially when we engage in practices like diaphragmatic breathing or mindfulness, the prefrontal cortex remains online. That's the part of the brain responsible for decision making, empathy, and long-term thinking. Without this pause, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, takes over. We react, we defend, we attack, we regret. Now imagine a woman, let's call her Mira. She is in her early 50s, having raised children and experienced both marriage and divorce. She is dating again after many years. In a recent interaction, a man she had been seeing suddenly became distant after an emotionally close weekend. Her first instinct was to text him paragraphs, to ask why, to question what changed, but instead, she stopped. She sat, she breathed. She remembered the stillness she had cultivated through years of meditation. And in that silence, she realized, I am not afraid of losing him. I am afraid of being left without understanding. So she wrote one sentence instead. I noticed a shift in your energy. If and when you're ready to talk, I'm here. No accusation, no pleading, just awareness and invitation. That is emotional discipline. That is how a woman speaks from depth, not from desperation. In Eastern philosophy, the still lake is often used as a metaphor for the mind. When disturbed, the water reflects nothing clearly. But when calm, it mirrors the moon, the mountains, and the stars. The same is true in conversation. When emotions flood unfiltered into our words, they blur clarity. But when we allow the waters to settle, we can speak truthfully, not just emotionally. This is not about control for the sake of perfection. It is about creating spaciousness between stimulus and response. That space is where wisdom lives. That space is where relationships either deepen or fracture. A high-value woman understands this. She allows herself to feel the storm, but she does not build a home in it. She waits. She breathes. And when she speaks, her words carry the weight of someone who has traveled through the emotion, not just reacted from it. She might say, "It hurt me when you didn't show up, but I know your absence doesn't define my worth. I'm sharing this because I value honesty, not because I need your validation." In one sentence, she honors her experience, maintains her dignity, and opens the door for mature dialogue. This emotional maturity becomes especially powerful in romantic dynamics, where many conversations happen not just with words but with nervous systems. When a woman remains calm during tension, her partner, consciously or unconsciously, feels it. He may still be reactive, but her grounded energy creates an alternative, regulation instead of escalation. This is especially true in long-term relationships. Over time, partners will trigger each other's past wounds. There will be moments of misattunement. But the woman who has trained herself to pause, to notice the emotion without immediately expressing it, creates a bridge rather than a battlefield. I once witnessed a couple, Sophia and Elijah, both in their 60s, married for over 30 years. They had experienced the full spectrum of love, passion, distance, forgiveness. During one dinner, he interrupted her in a group conversation. She went quiet. You could see the old pattern trying to rise. Her desire to correct him publicly, to demand respect. But instead, she placed her hand on her chest, closed her eyes for a moment, and smiled. Later, when they were alone, she said softly, "When you spoke over me tonight, I felt like I disappeared. I know that may not have been your intent, but I needed you to know how it landed." He listened. He didn't feel blamed. He felt invited to awareness. That is the difference emotional discipline makes. It is not about being less emotional. It is about being more masterful with your emotions. Like a martial artist who knows that strength is not in swinging wildly, but in knowing when and how to move. The emotional martial art of the high-value woman is her ability to choose response over reaction, not by suppressing her heart, but by aligning it with her breath, her body, and her wisdom. And this leads naturally to another rare and profound quality, the ability to listen like still water. In today's world, listening has become a lost art. Most people hear only enough to respond, or worse, to defend. But a high-value woman knows that the most powerful position in any conversation is not the speaker, it is the listener. True listening is not passive, it is deeply active. It requires the ego to step aside and say, "I don't need to be right, I need to understand." And in that act of surrender, something magical happens. The other person softens, because they no longer feel judged or fixed or argued with. They feel held. Listening like still water means allowing the other person's words to enter your awareness without immediately disturbing your peace. It means hearing the emotional truth beneath their language. It means making space without rushing to fill it. This is especially transformative when a woman listens to a man. Many men have been taught to guard their emotional world, to speak only when they feel absolutely safe, and so, when they finally do open, it is not always graceful. Sometimes it's awkward, sometimes it comes out in fragments. But the woman who listens with patience, without correcting, without interpreting every word through her own filter, she gives him a rare gift, the experience of being seen without pressure. There's a story told by a meditation teacher about a woman who came to one of his retreats. She had been married for 40 years, and when asked the secret to their bond, she said, "I never tried to be his mirror. I tried to be his lake." When asked what she meant, she said, "When he came home restless, I didn't reflect the restlessness. I absorbed it with peace. I let it pass through me like ripples in water, and only then would I speak." This way of listening requires tremendous inner strength. It is not easy to sit in silence when you are triggered. It is not easy to hold space for someone else's truth when it conflicts with your own. But it is in that sacred pause, in that openness, that intimacy is born. Modern relationship psychology now supports what ancient traditions have always known, that emotional attunement, the ability to sense and respond to the emotional needs of another, is the foundation of lasting connection, and attunement begins with listening. A high-value woman listens with her whole body. Her eyes are not scanning her phone. Her arms are not crossed. Her breath is not shallow with impatience. She is there. And in that presence, the other person feels their words matter. This does not mean she agrees with everything she hears, nor does it mean she tolerates disrespect. But she knows that even when she disagrees, she can listen first. That understanding does not require agreement. It requires presence. This presence creates space not only for others to be real, but for her own voice to be heard when she finally chooses to speak. Because her silence is not empty, it is attentive. Her stillness is not passive, it is powerful. Listening like still water also transforms the woman herself. It teaches patience. It strengthens intuition. It refines perception. She begins to hear not just the words others say, but the emotions behind them. The wounds, the hesitations, the silent hopes. And because she hears them, she can meet them with wisdom. Relationships are not sustained by grand gestures. They are held together by moments of deep attention. The kind of attention that says, "I am not trying to change you. I am trying to understand you." The kind of attention that says, "Even in disagreement, I will not abandon awareness." In the quiet world of still water, truth reveals itself. People speak what they never dared to speak. Healing begins where defensiveness ends. And love, real love, grows not from constant talking, but from sacred listening. So the high-value woman does not rush to fill the silence. She lets it breathe. She does not rush to be understood. She first seeks to understand. And in doing so, she creates a space where connection is not performed, but lived. She becomes not the noise, but the silence that holds all sound. Not the wave, but the ocean that allows it to rise and fall. And in that way of being, her relationships take on a depth that no performance can imitate. Presence is more than physical nearness. A person can be in the same room and yet miles away in thought. A woman can sit beside her partner, say all the right things, make all the right gestures, and yet not be present. And the absence of true presence is often what drains the vitality of a relationship. Not conflict, not disagreement, but the quiet erosion of connection through unawareness. High-value women are not remembered for what they wore, how they smiled, or even what they said. They are remembered for how they made others feel. And what creates that lasting imprint is not effort, it is presence. Presence begins not with others, but within oneself. It is the discipline of bringing your attention out of past regrets or future fears and placing it fully in the now. And when you do this, something remarkable occurs. You begin to sense more, hear more, understand more. You begin to experience not just the situation, but the energy of the moment. The nervous system, grounded in the present, shifts from a fight or flight state to one of calm alertness. This change is not abstract, it is physiological. Neuroscience has shown that when we direct our focus inward, through breath awareness, mindfulness, or body scanning, the vagus nerve is activated. This nerve, which runs from the brain to the gut, regulates the parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for rest, digestion, and repair. In short, presence literally soothes the body. And from this calm state, we relate differently. We no longer speak to control, we speak to connect. Consider this: two women, both in conversation with a man after a disagreement. One is mentally preparing her response while he speaks. She nods, but she's already editing his words in her mind, preparing her counterpoint. The other listens with full presence. Her eyes don't dart away. Her breath remains steady. She doesn't interrupt, nor does she plan what to say next. She simply receives. When it is her turn to speak, she chooses her words with awareness. One conversation creates more tension, the other, healing. Presence is power, but not in the way the ego defines power. Presence is not about dominance. It is not about cleverness. It is about being fully awake. And when a woman brings this kind of wakefulness into a relationship, everything transforms. A woman who is truly present will not accept being treated carelessly, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. Because when you are fully in your body, when your awareness is anchored in the now, you feel the disturbance when something is off. You feel the contraction in your chest, the tightness in your gut, the shift in your breath. Your body becomes the compass. And when you learn to trust this inner feedback, you do not need drama to make a decision. You need only awareness. A man may try to gaslight her, convince her that what she feels isn't real, but presence protects her. She does not argue. She does not fight to prove herself. She simply knows. And that knowing becomes her guide. She might say, "I don't feel safe continuing this conversation right now. Let's revisit it later." No threats, no blame, just grounded clarity. This is not emotional reactivity. This is embodied wisdom. In Taoist philosophy, there is a principle known as Wu Wei, effortless action. It describes the kind of action that flows from deep alignment with the present moment. Not forced, not reactive, but appropriate, fluid, timely. When a high-value woman speaks or acts from presence, her behavior carries this quality. She does not over-explain, because she trusts the energy behind her words. She does not chase, because she's not seeking something outside herself. Her presence is her offering, and those who can meet it will stay. In one of the old Zen stories, a young woman went to the master and asked, "How do I become magnetic to others?" The master replied, "Be so completely with yourself that others feel at home in your presence." This is the essence of what makes presence so rare and so irresistible. It creates an energetic space where others can land, not feel judged, not feel rushed, simply be. This brings us naturally to another profound characteristic of the high-value woman. Her boundaries are clear, but delivered with softness. Too often, in our modern culture, boundaries are spoken like weapons. People mistake boundaries for walls. But in reality, boundaries are not meant to keep people out. They are meant to teach people how to find the door. A woman with high self-respect does not use boundaries to punish. She uses them to communicate. She does not shout, "I won't tolerate this." Instead, she says calmly, "That doesn't work for me." No escalation, no shame. just clarity. And that clarity comes not from anger, but from alignment with her inner truth. Setting boundaries is not a rejection of love. It is a protection of it. It is the practice of maintaining an environment in which love can actually grow. Without boundaries, love becomes enmeshment, obligation, or performance. But with boundaries, love remains free and conscious. Psychologist Brené Brown once said, "The most compassionate people I know are also the most boundaried." This is because boundaries reduce resentment. They allow us to give freely, without depletion. They allow us to say yes with sincerity and no without guilt. Imagine a woman named Kyra. She is gentle, intuitive, and warm-hearted. But in her younger years, she often found herself exhausted in relationships. She gave too much. She stayed too long. She feared that saying no would make her unlovable. But as she began to study mindfulness, breathwork, and somatic awareness, she noticed something powerful. Every time she said yes when she meant no, her body would tighten. Her breath would grow shallow. She felt disconnected from herself. So she made a commitment. She would learn to honor her. Not with resistance, but with respect. One evening, a man she was dating asked her to change her weekend plans to accommodate him. She paused. Not out of hesitation, but out of care. Then she replied, "I value our time together, and I've also made plans that nourish me. Let's find another day that works for both of us." No explanation. No apology. Just truth. To her surprise, the man didn't resist. In fact, he respected her more. Because true masculine energy, whether in a man or in the world, does not resent boundaries. It respects them. Boundaries give form to love, like the banks that hold the river. Without the banks, the river spills in all directions and loses its strength. With them, it flows powerfully toward its destination. Boundaries also teach others how to value us. When a woman expresses her boundaries with calmness and kindness, she gives others the opportunity to rise into respect. And if they cannot, then her boundary also becomes her protection. She does not need to convince anyone to treat her well. She simply demonstrates what is and is not aligned, and she walks away when that alignment is missing. And yet, perhaps the most important boundary a woman can establish is the one she draws with herself. She does not permit herself to self-abandon. She does not allow herself to stay in places that deplete her spirit. She does not betray her intuition for temporary approval. These internal boundaries are the soil in which her external ones grow. In mindfulness teachings, one of the greatest disciplines is self-boundary. The boundary to stop before reacting. The boundary to pause before speaking. The boundary to breathe before making a decision. These small acts of restraint are not repression. They are reverence. Reverence for the present moment. Reverence for truth. Reverence for what we are actually feeling. And so, when this inner alignment is practiced over time, a high-value woman begins to speak differently. Her tone is softer but more firm. Her words are fewer, but they land with greater weight. Her presence becomes a boundary in itself. She no longer has to declare her worth. It emanates. In romantic dynamics, this is felt deeply. The man who once tested limits or grew complacent now feels something shift. Not because she threatened him, but because her energy has changed. She is no longer trying to hold the relationship together with fear or over-effort. She is holding herself together and inviting him to meet her there. This does not mean she becomes distant or guarded. On the contrary, her heart may be wide open, but it is open with awareness. She no longer sees love as something to earn. She sees it as something to offer, but only in environments that can receive and reciprocate it. And in this offering, her love becomes more powerful because it is no longer mixed with insecurity. It is not bargaining. It is not negotiating. It is simply being whole, generous, unafraid. Presence, boundaries, emotional clarity. These are not traits that arrive by chance. They are cultivated, practiced, embodied. The high-value woman does not chase attention. She cultivates energy. She does not demand love. She becomes love and watches who is able to receive it with integrity. And in this way, she speaks volumes, not always with words, but with the silent language of her grounded being. To be a high-value woman is not about impressing others. It is not about dominance, status, or charm. It is about inner alignment, about remembering that the quality of our communication reflects the depth of our awareness. That how we speak, how we respond, and how we hold ourselves, these are all extensions of how we see ourselves within. True feminine strength is not in how loudly you speak, but in how clearly you listen. To others, yes, but more importantly, to yourself. To the subtle signals of your body, to the quiet stirrings of your intuition, and to the wisdom that arises not from reaction, but from reflection. There is no need to perform when you live in presence. There is no need to control when you trust your boundaries. There is no need to chase love when you already walk in its frequency. You do not have to prove your worth, you have only to embody it. And in doing so, your relationships transform, not because others change, but because your energy no longer attracts chaos. It attracts clarity. It no longer entertains games. It calls forth truth. Remember this: the way you speak to a man teaches him how to listen to your soul. The way you listen to him teaches him how to feel safe in your presence. And the way you hold yourself teaches the world how to meet you. So walk with stillness, speak with honesty, set boundaries with grace, and most of all, stay rooted in the deep, unwavering understanding that the most magnetic quality you can ever possess is peace. This peace is not given by anyone. It is not achieved through status or beauty. It is earned by the quiet discipline of self-respect, by the courage to pause, breathe, and return, again and again, to your center. And from that center, you do not beg for love, you become it. Calmly, fully, unshakably. That is how a high-value woman speaks. That is how she lives.